You've been running from it your entire life, haven't you? That shadowy part of yourself that whispers uncomfortable truths in the quiet moments. The part that society taught you to suppress, to deny, to be ashamed of. But what if I told you that everything you've been taught about your darkness is a lie? What if the very thing you've been hiding from is actually the source of your greatest power? Nietzsche understood this fundamental truth that most people spend their entire lives avoiding, that your darkness isn't your enemy. It's your unrealized potential waiting to be transformed into authentic strength. You see, when Nietzsche spoke of the will to power, he wasn't talking about dominating others through manipulation or force. He was speaking about the courage to face the totality of who you are, including those aspects of yourself that make you uncomfortable, that challenge your carefully constructed self-image, that reveal the complexity of your human nature. Think about it. Every person who has ever achieved anything meaningful, who has created lasting change, who has transcended the ordinary limitations of human existence, has had to confront their shadow and integrate it rather than deny it. Your darkness contains your suppressed creativity, your unexpressed anger at injustice, your buried desires for authenticity, your hidden strength that's been suffocated by years of trying to be acceptable to others. Jung called this the shadow, all the parts of ourselves that we've rejected or refused to acknowledge because they don't fit the persona we've created for social acceptance. But here's what most people don't understand about shadow work. It's not about becoming evil or destructive. It's about reclaiming the energy you've been wasting on suppression and channeling it into genuine power. When you deny your darkness, you give it unconscious control over your life. It emerges in passive-aggressive behavior, in self-sabotage, in projecting your disowned qualities onto others, in a constant sense of being diminished and inauthentic. You become what Nietzsche would call one of the herd, following others' definitions of morality and goodness, while your true self withers away in the shadows. But when you have the courage to face your darkness directly, to examine it without judgment, to understand its origins and its messages, something miraculous happens. You begin to transform raw shadow material into conscious power. That anger you've been suppressing, it becomes the fuel for setting healthy boundaries and fighting for what matters to you. That selfishness you've been denying, it becomes healthy self-care and the ability to pursue your authentic path without constantly seeking others' approval. That darkness you thought made you unlovable, it becomes the depth and complexity that makes you genuinely interesting and real to others. Nietzsche wrote about the concept of amor fati, love of fate, which includes loving and accepting all aspects of your experience, even the painful and dark ones. This isn't passive resignation. It's the active choice to see your entire life experience, including your shadow qualities, as raw material for creating something magnificent. You cannot become who you're meant to be while rejecting half of who you are. The people who seem to have the most magnetic presence, the most authentic power, the deepest impact on others, they're not the ones who have eliminated their darkness. They're the ones who have integrated it consciously. They've learned to dance with their shadow rather than war against it. They understand that authenticity means owning all of yourself, not just the parts that are socially acceptable. Your darkness often contains your greatest gifts in distorted form. The person who has struggled with deep depression often develops profound empathy and the ability to guide others through their own dark nights of the soul. The person who has battled addiction understands the nature of compulsion and can help others break free from their own destructive patterns. The person who has felt like an outsider often becomes the one who creates space for other outsiders to belong. Your wounds, your struggles, your shadow qualities, they're not bugs in your programming. They're features that make you uniquely equipped to contribute something specific to the world. But this transformation requires what Nietzsche called transvaluation. The courage to question the values and moral judgments you've inherited and create your own relationship with what is good, beautiful, and powerful. Most people live their entire lives according to other people's definitions of virtue, never asking whether these definitions serve their authentic development or simply keep them small and manageable. When you begin to embrace your darkness consciously, you'll notice that certain people in your life become uncomfortable. This is inevitable. Your willingness to be whole threatens those who are still committed to being only half of themselves. Your refusal to play small challenges those who have made smallness their identity. Your authenticity highlights the inauthenticity in others, and some will try to shame you back into the shadows. This is where Nietzsche's concept of the Übermensch becomes relevant. not as some superior being who dominates others, but as someone who has the courage to transcend conventional limitations and create their own values based on their authentic nature. You become your own authority rather than constantly seeking validation from external sources. The process of integrating your shadow isn't comfortable. It requires facing parts of yourself you've been avoiding, admitting truths you've been denying, feeling emotions you've been suppressing. It means acknowledging that you're capable of pettiness, jealousy, anger, selfishness, all the qualities you've been taught make you a bad person. But here's the paradox. Only by acknowledging these qualities can you transform them from unconscious destructive forces into conscious creative power. When you try to be only light, you become bland, predictable, and powerless. When you integrate your darkness, you become dynamic, authentic, and genuinely influential. People are drawn to those who embody the full spectrum of human experience because they represent the possibility of wholeness that everyone secretly craves. Your darkness isn't something to be cured or eliminated. It's something to be understood, integrated, and transformed. Think about the people who have had the greatest impact on your life. Were they the ones who pretended to have no flaws, no struggles, no shadow qualities? Or were they the ones who were honest about their complexity, who shared their struggles along with their wisdom, who demonstrated that you could be powerfully human rather than perfectly fake? The energy you've been using to suppress your darkness could be redirected toward creating something meaningful. Every moment you spend trying to be someone you're not is a moment stolen from becoming who you actually are. Every bit of energy you waste on maintaining a false persona is energy that could be used for authentic creation, genuine connection, real impact. Nietzsche understood that the goal isn't to become perfect according to someone else's standards. It's to become fully yourself according to your own authentic nature. This requires the courage to disappoint others, to be misunderstood, to stand alone when necessary. It requires the willingness to be disliked by those who prefer you diminished rather than whole. Your darkness contains your power because it contains your truth. The parts of yourself you've been most ashamed of are often the parts that make you most human, most relatable, most capable of genuine connection with others. When you stop trying to be an impossible ideal and start being an authentic human being, you give others permission to do the same. This creates real intimacy, real influence, real power, not the brittle fake power that comes from manipulation or performance, but the sustainable, authentic power that comes from being genuinely yourself. The shadow work isn't just personal therapy, it's a revolutionary act. In a world that profits from your insecurity, your authenticity is rebellious. In a culture that demands conformity, your wholeness is radical. In a society that fears depth, your willingness to embrace your complexity is transformative. When you integrate your darkness, you become dangerous to systems that depend on keeping people small, fragmented, and seeking external validation. You become someone who cannot be easily controlled, manipulated, or diminished because you've already faced and integrated the parts of yourself that others might use against you. This is true power, not power over others, but power over your own life, your own choices, your own destiny. You stop being reactive and become responsive. You stop being driven by unconscious forces and become directed by conscious choice. You stop living according to others' scripts and start writing your own story. The darkness you've been running from isn't your enemy. It's your untapped potential waiting to be transformed into authentic strength. Every hero's journey requires a descent into the underworld, a confrontation with the shadow, an integration of what has been rejected. Your darkness is not the opposite of your light. It's the raw material from which your authentic light can shine. Nietzsche's truth is this: you cannot transcend what you refuse to acknowledge. You cannot transform what you will not face. You cannot integrate what you continue to deny. Your power lies not in perfection but in wholeness, not in purity but in authenticity, not in being invulnerable but in being courageously human. The key to your power has been with you all along, waiting in the shadows for you to be brave enough to claim it. But let's go deeper into what this actually means in your daily existence, because Nietzsche wasn't speaking in abstractions. He was revealing the most practical truth about human power that has ever been discovered. When you wake up tomorrow morning and look in the mirror, you have a choice. You can continue the exhausting performance of being who you think you should be, or you can begin the exhilarating journey of becoming who you actually are. The difference between these two paths is the difference between slavery and freedom. Between weakness disguised as virtue and authentic strength that needs no disguise, consider how much energy you expend daily trying to manage other people's perceptions of you. How many words do you swallow because they might reveal something uncomfortable about your true thoughts? How many desires do you suppress because they don't align with the image you've constructed? How many authentic responses do you edit before they leave your mouth? This constant self-censorship isn't protecting you. It's slowly killing the very essence of who you are. Your darkness includes your honest reactions to hypocrisy, your genuine feelings about injustice, your raw responses to betrayal, your unfiltered thoughts about the games people play. These aren't character flaws to be eliminated. They're data points about reality that your psyche is trying to communicate to your conscious mind. When you silence these internal signals, you lose access to your own wisdom, your own intuition, your own authentic guidance system. Nietzsche spoke of the eternal recurrence, the idea that you should live as if you had to repeat this exact life infinite times. Would you choose to repeat a life where you constantly betrayed yourself to gain others' approval? Would you choose to live forever as a diminished version of yourself, always performing, never authentic, never fully alive? The eternal recurrence isn't just a philosophical thought experiment. It's a practical test for whether you're living according to your own values or according to values imposed on you by others. Your shadow contains not just your so-called negative qualities, but also your suppressed magnificence. How many times have you dimmed your light because it made others uncomfortable? How often have you played small because your natural confidence triggered insecurity in those around you? How frequently have you hidden your intelligence, your creativity, your passion, your intensity, because it challenged the status quo of mediocrity that surrounds you? This is perhaps the most tragic aspect of shadow suppression. It's not just about hiding your flaws, it's about hiding your gifts. The very qualities that could make you extraordinary are often the ones you've learned to suppress because they make you different. And difference is dangerous in a world that rewards conformity. But here's what Nietzsche understood that most people never realize. Conformity is not safety, it's slow suicide. When you constantly adjust yourself to fit into spaces that were never designed for your authentic nature, you create a life that feels empty despite appearing successful from the outside. You achieve the goals that others set for you while ignoring the calling that emerges from your own depths. You become successful at being someone else while failing at being yourself. The integration of your shadow requires what Jung called holding the tension of opposites. You must learn to be simultaneously gentle and fierce, compassionate and boundaried, open and discerning, loving and ruthless when necessary. Most people try to be only one side of these polarities, which creates inner conflict and external ineffectiveness. But when you embrace the full spectrum of your nature, you become capable of responding to each situation with exactly what it requires rather than being limited to one emotional register. Your darkness teaches you about your limits, your needs, your non-negotiables. The person who has never felt rage has never learned to set proper boundaries. The person who has never experienced jealousy has never learned to value what truly matters to them. The person who has never felt contempt has never learned to discriminate between what deserves their respect and what doesn't. These so-called negative emotions are actually information systems that help you navigate reality more effectively. When you suppress them, you lose access to crucial data about your environment and your relationships. Think about the people in your life who drain your energy. Your shadow knows exactly who they are and exactly how they manipulate you, but your persona keeps making excuses for them because acknowledging the truth would require difficult conversations and potentially uncomfortable changes. Your darkness isn't wrong about these people. It's trying to protect you from relationships that diminish rather than enhance your authentic self. But you've been trained to override these internal warnings in the name of being nice, being understanding, being spiritual, being evolved. This is spiritual bypassing at its most destructive, using concepts of love and acceptance to justify accepting unacceptable treatment. True power comes from the integration of wisdom and boundaries, love and discernment, openness and protection. Your shadow contains your survival instincts, your competitive drive, your territorial nature, your capacity for strategic thinking. These aren't primitive throwbacks to be transcended. They're essential components of effectiveness in a world that often operates according to power dynamics, whether we acknowledge them or not. The person who pretends these dynamics don't exist becomes prey to those who understand and utilize them consciously. Nietzsche's will to power isn't about dominating others. It's about mastering yourself so completely that you cannot be dominated by others. This mastery requires acknowledging and integrating all aspects of your nature, including those that society has taught you to be ashamed of. Your anger, properly channeled, becomes your capacity for justice. Your selfishness, properly understood, becomes healthy self-advocacy. Your pride, properly integrated, becomes unshakable self-respect. Your competitiveness, properly directed, becomes the drive for excellence that elevates everyone around you. The process of shadow integration will change your relationships, and not everyone will appreciate these changes. Some people are invested in keeping you small because your diminishment makes them feel better about their own lack of authentic development. When you begin to embody your full power, you will trigger every unhealed wound in the people around you. This is not your responsibility to manage. Your responsibility is to become who you actually are, not to manage other people's comfort with your authenticity. You will lose some relationships in this process, but you will gain something far more valuable: the relationship with yourself that you've been seeking your entire life. You will discover that the approval of people who only like you when you're performing isn't actually worth having. You will learn that being loved for who you pretend to be is far more lonely than being alone while being authentic. The darkness you've been avoiding contains the keys to your creative power. Every great artist, every revolutionary thinker, every transformative leader has had to descend into their own depths and retrieve something that others were afraid to touch. Your unexpressed creativity is hiding in your shadow, waiting for you to be brave enough to let it emerge, even if it doesn't match others' expectations of what your creativity should look like. Your authentic voice is in your shadow, waiting for you to stop trying to sound like everyone else and start speaking your own truth. The world doesn't need another copy of someone who already exists. It needs the original that only you can be. But becoming this original requires the courage to disappoint others, to be misunderstood, to stand alone when necessary. It requires the willingness to be criticized by those who have never had the courage to attempt authenticity themselves. Your darkness is the key to your power because it contains everything you've been afraid to own about yourself. When you own it consciously, it can no longer be used against you. When you integrate it wisely, it becomes the foundation of unshakable strength. When you transform it deliberately, it becomes the source of your greatest contributions to the world. This is Nietzsche's truth. You are not here to be perfect. You are here to be whole. You are not here to be comfortable. You are here to be authentic. You are not here to please everyone. You are here to express the unique configuration of consciousness that you represent. Your darkness is not your enemy. It is your teacher, your ally, your unutilized power waiting to be claimed by someone brave enough to face the totality of their own nature.